Okay, we're ready to get started. Let's create a new Unreal Engine project. I'm using 5.6, but you can use the latest version at the time that you watch this. So I'm going to launch the Unreal Engine editor. I'm going to choose Games, and we're going to start with a completely blank project, selecting C++. I'm going to make sure that I have a good folder selected. And for the project name, I'm going to call this Crash Course. You can call your project whatever you want. That's just the name I'm going to give it. We'll go ahead and create this. Now, it's going to create a Visual Studio project, but I'm going to switch to the Writer IDE. It doesn't matter which IDE that you use for the course, but I just prefer Writer. So I'm going to end up closing this Visual Studio solution and changing the source code editor from within my project. So I can go ahead and close Visual Studio. And if your source code editor was already set to Writer, then you probably don't have a Visual Studio solution at all. But I'm just going to go through the steps of setting things up. These are the steps that I always follow when creating a new project. So first I go to Edit, Editor Preferences, and I search for source code. And I'm going to change this from Visual Studio 2022 to Writer U project. Now it's going to say that a restart is required. I'm going to go ahead and restart now. And now that I've done that, I can actually pull up my project here in Explorer, and I can delete my .sln, as I won't actually be using that. I'm just going to be opening my IDE from my .u project file. So I can right-click on that, and I can choose Open With. And if you don't see JetBrains Writer, you can choose another app and select JetBrains Writer. And this is going to open Writer for this Unreal Engine project. So I'm going to trust and open, and I'm going to give Writer a few moments to set up the project here while I go back to the Unreal Engine editor. Now, another setting that I recommend is here in Editor Preferences, I'm going to search for reinstancing, and I'm going to uncheck Enable Reinstancing. Now, I typically don't use live coding, but reinstancing can cause problems, and it's one of the first things that I disable. Now, I'm also going to go to All Settings here in Editor Preferences and scroll down to Asset Editor Open Location. I'm going to change this from Default to Main Window. Now, when I open an asset, such as an actor blueprint, it's going to dock automatically on the main window, so I don't have to click and drag to dock it. Now that I have my preferences set up, the next thing I'm going to do is go to my content drawer and create an overall folder for the things that I'm going to create in this project. So I'm going to create this new folder. I'm going to call it Crash Course, the same name as my project. And here in Crash Course is where I'm going to place folders that I create for this project. The first of which is going to be a Maps folder. One of the first things I do when I create a new Unreal Engine project is I create a new level because I don't really want to use this open world map by default. So I'm going to go to File, New Level, and choose Basic. It's a nice compromise between empty and open world. So I'm going to create this level and go to File, Save Current Level As, and go to my New Maps folder and call this CC Map. And because I called this project Crash Course, I'm going to prefix some of my classes and assets with CC to distinguish them from engine classes and assets for the most part. So I'm going to save that level here in Maps, and I'm going to set this to be my editor startup map. We can do that by going to Edit, Project Settings, and finding Maps and Modes, and I'm going to change the editor startup map to CC Map and my game default map as well to CC Map. Now when I open my project, it'll open straight to CC Map, and I won't have that open world level. And the last thing we're going to do here in Project Settings is scroll down to the copyright notice. We're going to change this first thing. This will affect the first comment line in your source code files. I'm going to say copyright Druid Mechanics. And you could put anything you want here. You could put your own name, the name of your organization, and so on. All right, we're done with project settings. Now that I have this project set up the way I want it, it's time to import some assets into this project that we can use for our characters and our effects and so on. For this course, I'm going to head on over to Fab, and I'd like to use a couple of the free Paragon assets that Epic Games has provided. I'm going to search for Paragon Boris, And I'd like to use this bear creature. So I'm going to get that into my project. As you can see, I already have it saved to my library, but you can get this asset for free and it'll be added to your Epic Games launcher. I'm also going to get Paragon Minions, as this gives us several characters we can use as enemies in this gas project, both melee and ranged attackers with guns. So if you're following exactly, go ahead and get this Minions pack as well, but you're free to use other assets if you like. Just keep in mind that these Paragon assets have everything we need, from characters to animations to even particle effects. So for the smoothest experience, I recommend following exactly, but you're free to use whatever assets you wish. So once you have these added to your Epic Games account, we can pull up the Epic Games launcher once again and go to Library and scroll down to the Vault, where I can search for these asset packs. I'm going to get Paragon Boris and add it to my project. Searching for Crash Course. We'll go ahead and add that. And while that's happening, I'm going to search for Minions and add this also to my project, Crash Course. So we'll give that a few moments. It's queued until Boris is done, so this will just take a minute. We can also click on Downloads and watch the progress as it goes. And once that's completed, I'm done with my Epic Games launcher for now, and I should have Paragon Boris and Paragon Minions here in my project. Now I'm going to leave these outside of my Crash Course folder. I don't need to bring them in. You can if you like, but I'm going to keep them out here in the content folder, so we'll have 3 overall folders. So now that our project is set up, we're ready to start creating some C++ classes, and I can open my Writer IDE. We always get the prompt asking if we want to install the WriterLink Unreal Editor plugin, either in the engine or in the game. I always click More and choose Install Plugin in Game. And once that's finished, we should be ready to start creating our C++ classes, and we'll start doing that in the next video. Now, in the resources for this video, I've provided a project that you can download and unzip, and it's called Attack Niagara Systems. And if you open that project, you'll be presented with a nearly empty project, except it has this folder structure with 2 Niagara systems that I've created. Now, I've created these because the Paragon Boris pack contains all Cascade particle systems, which is the legacy system, and we can and will be using lots of those particle systems, but I've converted one of those particle systems into 2 attack particles. These are slash particles. These are Niagara systems that I've made from those Cascade assets, and it'll be a lot easier for us to use the Niagara versions of these as opposed to the Cascade systems. So if you'd like to import these into your project, you can do so by simply selecting both primary and secondary impact particles here, right-clicking them, going to Asset Actions and Migrate. And these contain lots of assets that are already in the Paragon Boris pack. So you can leave everything checked here, but when you click OK and you find your project and select its content folder and choose Select Folder, you're going to get the message that some of these assets already exist, and they're asking if you'd like to overwrite them, but you can click Apply to All and select No, and we'll just get those Niagara systems. And they exist in this folder. Sometimes they disappear when you migrate them. They're still there. When you close and reopen this project, they'll be there. But now we can look in this folder in our project that we've migrated to, and we can see those Niagara systems there, and we can open them and make sure that they're working. And now we have these slash particle systems, which should now work in our project. Now, there's one component to this that we can't see, and that's the claws. So you have to go down to Sprite Renderer and browse to the material. It's impact slash. Open that up and check two-sided in the details panel. Save that, close it out, and now we can see those claws. So we have primary and secondary. One is slashing diagonally one way, the other is slashing the other way, and these can be used for our attack for the character we'll be using. So now that you have these Niagara systems, we're ready to get started on the project. Excellent job, and I'll see you in the next video.